If your case is labeled as marriage fraud, you're in big trouble. If you stay with me, I will give you a couple of examples of how this can ruin your life, and it really can. Now, marriage-based immigration is one of the most heavily scrutinized areas of U.S. immigration law. If the government determines that the marriage was entered into for the purposes of evading immigration laws, the consequences can be permanent, severe, and in many cases, irreversible. USCIS is now hot on the trail of marriage fraud cases, so be very careful. What is a sham marriage? Under immigration law, a sham marriage is a marriage entered into primarily for obtaining immigration benefits rather than building a real marital life together. USCIS does not require a perfect marriage. Couples can argue, they can even separate, they can struggle financially. The issue is intent at the time that the marriage was entered into. If the intent was to bypass immigration laws, you're in big trouble. Immigration fraud is different than misrepresentation versus what you're doing right now. Under misrepresentation, a foreign national is permanently inadmissible if they willfully misrepresented a material fact to obtain an immigration benefits. It's a lifetime bar. It doesn't expire. Lying about living together, fabricating documents, or staging a fake relationship can trigger this ground. Now, marriage fraud. If USCIS determines that the prior marriage was entered into for fraudulent reasons to evade immigration laws, it permanently bars approval of any future benefits. Now, there's a difference. With misrepresentation, there are waivers. There are no waivers available at all for marriage fraud. Also, marriage fraud is a crime. Knowingly entering into a marriage for immigration fraud purposes is a federal crime, and the penalties can be up to 5 years in jail, fines of $250,000, and it can create a criminal record for both parties. Now, what are the consequences? What if you're caught in this thing? It's devastating. It is a permanent inadmissibility. You cannot fix it. Even if you get married to somebody else, it's going to be extremely difficult, almost impossible. As far as misrepresentation, there are waivers available, but when it comes to marriage fraud under Section 204C, marriage fraud is a permanent bar. If USC applies 204C, no future family-based immigration, no employment-based immigration, no waivers, nada. And you'll end up in removal proceedings if fraud is discovered. And if you had a green card issued to you temporarily, that would be taken away also. They can rescind your lawful permanent residence. If you're in removal proceedings, an immigration judge can order deportation based on fraud or misrepresentation, fraud at entry, or even take away your citizenship. If you've become a citizen, it can take away your citizenship, or it can block naturalization if it's discovered prior to that. What are the consequences for the U.S. citizen permanent resident? They're not immune. They're exposed criminally because they knowingly participated in a sham marriage, and that's a federal offense. Prosecution can result in prison time, as I said, for aiding and abetting an immigration fraud, and the U.S. citizen spouse may face conspiracy charges, future petitions, scrutinies, and all kinds of stuff. So again, this is a gift that keeps on giving for both sides. Investigation may be reopened for prior filings, from many years ago. What are the long-term consequences? They're permanent. If, again, you're found with marriage fraud, it's devastating. It's lifetime inadmissibility, permanent inability to obtain visas, denials at the consular level, revocation of approved petition, exposure to denaturalization even decades later. Denaturalization can also result if you were naturalized and then later on it's found out that the initial green card was obtained through a phony marriage. They can denaturalize you. There is no statute of limitation for it, for denaturalization, so this would be done years later. How is a sham marriage investigated? USCIS takes marriage fraud very seriously, and it devotes a significant amount of resources to it. They do a Stokes interview. What is a Stokes interview? A Stokes interview it normally happens after an initial interview has already been set and the officers smell something fishy going on. They will separate the couple into different rooms and ask identical questions from them. Questions you've seen hundreds of them online, I guess. What color is your toothbrush? What day is the garbage day in the house? What color are the walls? What color is your refrigerator? Things like that. And if you answer them different than your spouse, then you're caught in that snare. Site visits after marital residence. This normally happens after the initial interview, when the officer is not satisfied with what you answer during the interview and their suspicions have been raised. They do site visits, and they normally do it bright and early in the morning, before dawn, basically. So, you open the door. Where is your husband? Where is your wife? Oh, they're not here, or they're sleeping in a different room. You're in trouble. Review of financial records. They can take a look and see if you've commingled your life, if you've mixed things up. Look, if you're really married, you don't know where you end and where your spouse begins. Your life has enmeshed with each other. If it has not, it could be a telltale sign that this is not a real marriage. Social media analysis. They can take a look at your social media and see if there are any signs of your spouse in there. Review of your prior immigration filings. They can look at what has been filed before, and from that, see, for example, I've had this happen where a real husband and wife separated and they each married somebody else. Uh, Before doing that, they had filed something together and they had been unsuccessful. So this act of separating or divorcing each other, it's a sham divorce. And then the subsequent marriage is a sham marriage also. Needless to say, they were in a whole bunch of trouble. And there are many other ways of investigating this. So be very careful. Marriage fraud does not pay, and it has severe, severe consequences. The common warning signs that the officer is looking for is no shared residence, no commingled finances, inconsistent interview responses, prior immigration violations, payment for marriage arrangements. They can go through your bank accounts and see, something like this. Large age gaps. Now, this by itself is not a reason, but it could open the door to other questioning or raise suspicions. So I don't want to discourage you if you're in love with somebody who's older or younger, but just understand this could happen. A short courtship, you knew each other for a very short period of time, and then you got married. Britney Spears knew the second or third husband, whatever it was, for only hours before they tied the knot in Las Vegas. But you're not Britney Spears. You could be under suspicion because of fast marriages. Prior I-130 filings for other spouses. If you're a serial marriage fraud, actor, you did this for one party and made money out of it and thought, oh, that's the ticket. I'm going to do this over and over again. You'll get caught at some point. It's not just these. There are many factors they look into. Waiver limitations for this. There are no waivers for marriage fraud. If you're charged under misrepresentation, there is waivers for that available if you can show exceptional and extremely unusual hardship to a spouse or a parent, not children, spouse or a parent. But they often, because of that, they often don't charge you with misrepresentation. They charge you with marriage fraud under Section 204C. So there are no waivers for it. And even if you do have waivers under the misrepresentation part of the law, it's discretionary. They may not do it for you. What happens if you are accused of marriage fraud? What can you do? Number one, do not ignore it. It's not going to go away. Do not attend interviews unprepared. Go in with an attorney and make sure you prepare beforehand. Immediate steps that you should take. Obtain a full copy of your immigration file, whatever has been filed before. Sometimes you have to file a FOIA petition for this. Review the basis of the allegation. Preserve any documentary evidence that you may have. What do I mean by this? Sometimes we are careless about how we store documents and how we maintain them. While you're an immigrant, you have to be very careful about keeping all your documents, especially those that can show a commingling of your life with your spouse. So later on, if asked for, you can give those. Prepare detailed, consistent timelines. Avoid submitting, statements that are inconsistent with each other. And once again, just make sure you have an attorney for all of this. This is not the sort of area you want to venture into alone, because if there is a mistake, if there is an issue and you're labeled with a marriage fraud situation, it's a permanent lifetime bar. So folks, how does this happen? I have in 30 years, almost 30 years of practicing law, I've had many cases where the person was labeled with a marriage fraud case, but they didn't put this person in removal proceedings. They forgot. This person remained here because they had arrived legally in the United States. They thought if they get married to somebody else, they would be fine. Many, many years later, they got married to a U.S. citizen. They had children. At some point, they summed up enough courage to come to my office because they wanted to get their paperwork straight. But the bad news I had to give them was, regardless of how successful they had become and how many U.S. citizen children they had and how much they loved their current wife and how real was this marriage, they could not get a green card because of this. So with marriage fraud, again, this is a lifetime permanent bar. It can ruin your life. And if you're trying to immigrate, I'm sure ruining your life is not what you want to do. So be careful with that. If you need more help in this area or if you have questions to answer, call us. Call me at the office and we'll take care of you. Thank you very much.